Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Income is the Outcome, where we believe it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and joining me in the studio is the founder and president of the Whistler Agency, Tim Whistler. We're so glad you're joining us today. We have a very fun and important show for you. The title of today's episode is Paychecks and Playchecks, How to Secure Your Retirement Income. Tim, my friend, so good to be here with you this week. How are you?
I'm well, Kristin. It's always great to be back in the studio with you again here today.
Well, thank you. I know you've been so busy meeting with folks, and it's just so exciting to hear the response that we are receiving from this television show, how far-reaching it is, and folks are coming in and their lives are being changed for the better. It's just so exciting.
It is. This is truly such a gift and such a blessing to be able to do this, to share a message. And now we're in the homes of so many more people, just to, again, help them understand their options when it comes to setting up a fantastic retirement income plan.
Yes, and it's all about that retirement income, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. There is a saying within our industry of paychecks and playchecks. What does that mean? And most importantly, what does that mean for you and your retirement income plan? That's what we're going to be unpacking today. And this phrase was originally coined by a man named Tom Hegna. He's an award-winning author, economist, and a financial planning retirement income expert. So we're going to talk about what this phrase means and really how you can achieve both financial stability and freedom and still make sure you can have some fun in retirement as well. That's key, right?
Yes.
So this concept of paychecks and playchecks, it's very simple but powerful. Can you break it down and explain it in a little more depth?
Sure. So when you think in terms of during your working years, you got paid every month or every other week, right?
Yep.
And where did those dollars usually go to first? The mortgage, the utility bills, the insurance, braces for the kids, the raising auto insurance premiums because we have teenage drivers, right? All of that.
Right. Yep.
So we need the paychecks to pay for our needs. Then we set up a savings account. So therefore, we want to maybe take the family on vacation for the summer, or maybe look at the different car. So in other words, it's the same analogy for retirement. We have the paychecks, making sure we have dollars coming in to take care of our basic needs, the needs that we have to get through to survive in life.
Right.
Then we have the playchecks. This is the fun part of retirement. Now we get to pay for those extracurricular activities that we want to do during our retirement years.
Right, so paychecks and playchecks covering two types of income. But before we go more deeply into those, I think what's interesting is folks don't typically think about it in those terms, right? People think about, oh, I have a certain lump sum saved up for my retirement, and they kind of lump it all together. Why, from your point of view, is it so critical to differentiate between these two types of income?
And not to pour negativity on this conversation, but you think about, why do lottery winners go broke? Why do professional athletes go broke after earning tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars? There was no plan. Everything to them was just constantly paychecks. Well, you have to set up a plan. We have to identify what you need to sustain life in retirement and what you want to do in retirement. So I think understanding, number one, the definitions of the two. The number two, I think we have to understand that we have the ability now to set up paychecks because that's the backbone of our retirement.
Yes.
Right? Covering our needs.
Yes.
Then we can incorporate what's left over, can go into the playchecks. What we want to do in retirement for those go-go years, like Tom Hegna talks he talks about.
All those bucket list items, right?
Exactly right. Yeah. Everything we want to do, now we've got the money for that. But first we have to establish the baseline of making sure we've got the paychecks we need in retirement, almost like you have a license to spend your money.
Yes.
And we can incorporate playchecks into the overall plan.
Which you mentioned license to spend. For our viewers who might be newer to you and don't know, this is Tim's book, License to Spend, and it's such a great read, and I know you love being able to give out a copy of this book when folks come in and meet with you, right?
Absolutely. I kind of basically use that as a glorified business card. When the first box of books showed up at the house, my wife, she had such pride in her eyes and joy, and it was an honor for her to react that way. But I said, honey, this is not going to create a huge amount of income for us. I did not write this book for another source of income.
Right.
I wrote this book to be a glorified business card. This is who we are. This is how we can help, and this is how we've helped other people. So that's why we love to hand that book out. Again, just to provide some information to folks that maybe can improve where they're currently at when it comes to retirement income planning.
And I love the subtitle, just for those of you that aren't aware. It says, a retirement plan based on income, not if-come, right? That's the important distinguisher.
That is it. That's the one we want to kind of build a plan around.
For sure. Well, I think today's show is a perfect segue into that because we're talking about paychecks and playchecks. Let's start with the paycheck portion. Now, when someone's nearing retirement, how do they even go about trying to figure out what their paycheck needs to look like? What kind of things do they need to consider?
When folks come in and meet with us, they are given a checklist. These are the items that you need to bring with us to have that first get acquainted conversation. Bring in the most recent statements from your assets, your CDs, your life insurance policies, any long-term care policies, anything that has an account or a policy with your name on it, bring it in. Then we have that get acquainted conversation. As we close that out, I give them a little bit of another homework assignment. When we come back for the initial analysis, where we reveal what does that complimentary written plan look like, they're going to provide back to me between that first meeting and the second meeting a spending plan.
Okay.
This is where I'm going to email that link to them. That way they can jump online. They go into a secure website. It has basically a breakdown of a basic template, breaks down our expenses in 7 different categories. We can customize that. Now we can simply take inventory or create a spending plan for our needs, but also we want to incorporate our wants. What do we want to do in retirement? But that's where we start. We have to create that baseline to understand this is what you're going to need in retirement. This is what we want to do in retirement.
Right.
And we have to differentiate the two, and it all starts with that conversation.
And I think what's interesting too is this is what I think a lot of folks are fearful of when it comes to retirement, because you're very used to getting that paycheck. Maybe it was every 2 weeks or at least once a month. Now you're in retirement. It's up to you to create that paycheck for yourself. I think this is why a lot of folks are very overwhelmed by this and have a hard time switching gears into spending their hard-earned money that they've been accumulating, right?
It's just like what Tom says in one of his books. If you don't spend your money, your kids will. And why don't we have that? Because we have not given ourselves a license to spend our money. And it all starts with that written financial plan. It's not about just having assets and statements all over the place. It's about how do we transition from the working years to retirement years, and then how do we transition one more level? We have to transition those assets into income, and then from there, we can create the paychecks, and then we can create the playchecks.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to continue that conversation with you. But for our viewers who are watching, if this is something that's resonating with you and you know that you need to have a plan put together to help secure your retirement income, this is why you offer the complimentary written financial plan.
It's what it's all about. It's what the book is all about. It's what the conversation is all about. Let's come in. Let's talk about what's on your mind right now, what your concerns are. There's some things that we maybe need to address, but you're not sure how to address them. Let's have the conversation, because you're not alone. Many of our viewers are sitting right where you sit right now, but now they've got a plan. They've got a written financial plan in place that is customized for them and can reveal to them where are the paychecks and where are the playchecks.
I love that. Well, Tim, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, if that's resonating with you and if you would like help putting together this retirement income plan for yourself, again, the invitation is for you to pick up the phone and call the number you see on the bottom of your screen. This is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how Tim and the Whistler Agency can help and serve you. 888-992-7829 is the number to call, or you're welcome to scan that QR code that you see there in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and that will get you connected as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to dive more deeply into how to build the paycheck bucket, and then, of course, how to have fun in retirement, what you need to know about building your playcheck bucket. Stay with us.
Writing a book was an idea that I came up with several years ago, but I never really engaged in the idea because I thought, it's too big of a task. Until about late 2022, I found the publisher that I thought would possibly be a good fit, and it has been. I'm really excited to introduce my book, which is entitled License to Spend, a retirement plan based upon income as opposed to IFCOME. What I really wanted to do with the book was simply just try to connect with folks to meet them where they're at. They're about to embark upon a journey they've never encountered before. They're uncertain, it's a little bit overwhelming. So I thought, if I could put together just kind of a personalized book, just to hopefully maybe make that connection with somebody so that they maybe feel like we won't really have to do this by ourselves. We can engage with somebody who's already helped other people just like us, embark upon that journey, and just try to put it together in kind of an easy to read format, connect with them on their thoughts, their concerns, and just try to provide that resource that can kind of help address those ideas and share with them what kind of they can expect whenever they come in and talk to us about that retirement income plan that they would like to have. With every conversation I have with folks, whether it's the first time we've met, whether it's the second time we've talked through the plan, or if we're going through our 10th annual review together, my hope is to be able just to provide some type of information and knowledge maybe they weren't aware of before. I hope to be able to create that takeaway where they're like, wow, I didn't really know that, but that makes sense. The publisher, when we were putting together the thoughts and putting together the plan on how we were going to extrapolate all these thoughts and ideas into this book, he said, one of the most important parts of the book is going to be getting, testimonials from some of your clients. And, I'd never asked my clients those questions before. I didn't really have any idea. I just knew that they liked the plan. We put the plan together and we review the plan on a regular basis. And man, when you get those testimonials back from people and you can see the impact that it had on their lives, it was unbelievable. And in fact, that's my favorite part of the book. It's incredibly powerful.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome. I'm Kristin Oakley here with Tim Whistler, where today we are talking about paychecks and playchecks, how to secure your retirement income. And now that we have defined the difference between those two categories of income, the next step is to go about building the paycheck portion of your retirement income plan. So, Tim, for folks that you work with, when you're building someone's paycheck bucket, what are typically the main sources of guaranteed income that folks have available to them to help build that bucket?
We start off with Social Security. That's the first one that most people are qualified for. So if they've not already turned on Social Security, we ask them to bring their statements in with them. So that way we can talk through what's the best way to optimize their benefit, because again, that's going to establish the baseline for the paychecks.
Right.
Number two, here in Central Illinois, we've got companies like Caterpillar and OSF. We've got universities all over the place where those types of employees have the blessing of having a pension. So again, if we've not turned on the pension yet, you're not sure, what option do I select? Do I do the single life? Do I do joint? If I include my spouse, how much do I leave behind for her or him? Let's have the conversation. We'll maximize your pension as well. That way then we've got Social Security and pensions establishing the baseline for the paychecks. And for those folks maybe who don't have, maybe they look at their Social Security benefit, they compare it to their expenses, and maybe they don't have access to a pension. Sometimes we can implement a third element, like for example, maybe one of the members of the annuity family. Now again, I said one of the members, that's the key factor. It's not a one size fit all, and there's a couple of them out there that you probably really want to second guess before you buy one.
Right, stay away from, right?
Stay away from. We want the ones that have fixed in front of their title or
Right.
in their title. We want to have ones that provide guarantees. So I think between Social Security, pensions, and if a member, if need be, of the annuity family really establishes that baseline or that backbone of a retirement income plan.
And as you were talking, Tim, it made me think about how a lot of times, folks are so quick to say, oh, I hate annuities, right?
Yes.
And we know that not all annuities are created equal. But what's interesting is if you ask people, well, do you like your Social Security check? Oh, yeah, I love that. Well, what do you love about it? Well, it's guaranteed income that comes in to me for the rest of my life. Do you like your pension? Oh, love my pension, right? Why? Because it's guaranteed income that I'm going to be paid for the rest of my life. With the right kind of annuity, what you're doing is actually creating a personal pension for yourself, if you will, right?
That's a great description. That's exactly what it is. You actually can take a 401k. You can take non-qualified joint account between husband and wife and convert those dollars, if it's the right fit, like Kristin said, into your own personal pension, i.e. money you will never outlive.
And that's a beautiful thing,
Yes,
for
it
sure.
is. That's right.
All right, well, how much guaranteed income does someone actually need? Because I think that's the other challenge, right? Is figuring out how much should you have. And so is there a certain formula or a rule of thumb that you recommend to folks?
There are formulas and rules of thumb out there, but they're not the ones I recommend. Like, for example, the 4% rule, or that whole adage, you better have at least $1 million if you're going to think about retirement. No. We're going to walk through the Get Acquainted conversation. We're going to go through and unpack the assets that you have, the income that you have. I'm going to provide you with that expense template so you can populate those numbers and factor in your expenses that you have now and maybe some expenses you'll have down the road. We put all that in together into that software package, which ultimately leads to that roadmap, i.e. the written financial plan. Therefore, it's not a one-size-fit-all. What works for one household may be completely different for another household because the assets are different, the Social Security numbers might be different, the expenses might be different.
Right.
Everybody's view of retirement is very interesting. It's very different. Some folks are completely content with maybe taking a road trip every now and then. Other people are like, you know what? We are going to visit places we've never seen. We've seen them on TV, maybe on the Discovery Channel. We want to get into a cruise ship or fly across the pond.
Right.
Let's plan for that. So therefore, that's basically the source that we utilize to create that written financial plan. So that way a client understands that, okay, this is where we're at. This is ultimately where we want to go.
Right.
And now we've got that written financial plan to keep us on track. And that way we can give ourselves a good chance to fulfill what we want to do in retirement.
And I love that there's no cookie cutter approach to this, right? Because everyone's dreams and desires are different. So really what you get to do is folks come to you and say, okay, Tim, these are the things that I need. These are the things I want to do. Okay, show me how to make this happen, right?
Absolutely. And the joy that it comes from them having that written financial plan, Kristin, I'm telling you, it's so wonderful to hear somebody say, or actually physically see them just, they take a breath.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this. We've got a plan. Now we know where we're at and where we're headed. What a joy that is to be able to do that for each household at a time who comes in and visits with us.
That's so awesome. Well, I know that a lot of folks often have this income gap, meaning that they come to you and, this is how much income they need, but maybe Social Security isn't quite enough, or maybe they have a pension, it's not quite enough, or maybe they don't have a pension. So can you go into a little more depth about how you're able to cover that income gap?
That's where my team and I really, collaborate together to provide that written plan for somebody, because we want to understand, when a client kind of tells us where they want to go, i.e. the expense template or the spending plan, if you will, that really opens up the doors for us to say, okay, now we know what Bob and Mary need, or we know now what Sally needs on her own. Whatever the case may be, we can put that together for somebody, because if there's a shortfall, that doesn't mean you're out of luck. That simply means, how do we leverage the assets that you have, the 401k, the traditional IRA, maybe the Roth IRA, maybe a 457B. Whatever the case is, we'll walk through how to leverage those assets into the income plan. And if we need to bring in a product like an annuity, we're going to explain to you why we'd recommend something like this. What are the benefits of it? Maybe some also, what are some of the challenges of it? Because from the standpoint of when we break down a plan, we want to help them understand that this is the feature that we'd recommend, and this is why we'd recommend it, because it fits into your overall retirement income plan.
And that's so key, is to understand the why behind it, right?
We have to do that. That all starts with the why. It's not about the number.
Right.
It's about the timeline, the assets that we have, and how do we convert those into the income that we need if there's a little bit of a gap from those guaranteed paychecks that come in.
Well, I know you have no shortage of stories of folks who you've walked through this very process with, and I know our viewers love story time on this show. Are there any stories that come to mind of an example of a recent retirement income plan you've built for someone that really does a good job of illustrating how all these different multiple sources of guaranteed income can fit together?
Absolutely, and one of my favorites. In fact, she was so grateful to actually share one of the testimonials in my book. So again, we don't disclose names. But basically, the conversation started quite a few years ago. She was in the twilight years of her working years. She knew she had Social Security waiting for her. She knew she had a pension waiting for her, and she had a pretty robust portfolio of assets. But she also had some very specific things she wanted to do in retirement. So therefore, we started that conversation off. Okay, what do we have access to us? What accessibility do we have as far as the Social Security, the pension, and the assets? And then we were able to have several conversations to unpack the overall plan. And we just conducted our most recent review again just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And it's just such a joy to be able to transition somebody from the chaos of what ifs. How am I going to do this? What does all this mean?
Yep.
And then you just kind of walk through systematically with 1 hour and a half conversations over time. And again, we go at the client's pace.
Yeah.
We're not going to rush through this. This is a big decision. And we were able to put together that written financial plan for her. And now we're at the standpoint of she's enjoying retirement, and we're reviewing the numbers on a regular basis. And now she actually gets to see how that retirement roadmap has now come to life in retirement for her.
And no doubt, knowing that paycheck bucket is covered is giving her permission, or a license to spend, if you will, right? To enjoy the paycheck aspect of retirement as well.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, if this is resonating with you, if you would like help putting together a comprehensive retirement income plan for yourself that addresses your paychecks and your playchecks, if you're going, yeah, I'm sick and tired of worrying about how much money I have and if it's going to be enough to last me throughout the rest of my life, we encourage you to pick up the phone and call that number you see on the bottom of your screen to schedule your very own complimentary written financial plan. That number to call is 888-992-7829, or if you prefer connecting online, simply scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Not only will you be able to start that process to receive your very own complimentary written financial plan, but Tim and the team would love to give you a complimentary copy of his book, License to Spend, a retirement income plan built on income, not IFCOM. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to be talking more in depth about how to build the paycheck bucket for your retirement. This is going to be a really fun conversation. Stay with us. We'll be back with more right after this.
I remember telling my dad when I was a senior at Illinois State University, Dad, I always want to run my own small business of some sort of fashion. Didn't really know what that looked like. And then in February of 2000, my wife and I celebrated the birth of our firstborn, Cameron. And at the time we were living in Denver. About a couple of weeks after his birth, my mom and dad were going to make the trip out. And I remember that morning, my dad calling and saying, hey, Mom's not feeling good today, so we're going to postpone leaving today. We'll try to leave tomorrow. And unfortunately, tomorrow just kept coming and coming and coming. It never showed up. So a couple months passed and we decided to go ahead and make the drive back to Central Illinois. And the first time my mom met Cameron she was in a hospital bed. The doctor diagnosed her with very aggressive terminal small cell cancer. My very first Father's Day there in June of 2000 was the last Sunday my mom was ever alive ever again. It was shortly thereafter that when my father went and received some financial advice and we started talking a little bit more detail about finances, and I started to look at these statements and I said, Dad, this guy's taking advantage of you. He's doing so much buying and selling in your account that you're losing a ton of money to pay his commissions. I said, I'm gonna start earning my licenses right now to become a financial advisor, because what you just experienced, I think, is happening way too often in our industry. I wanna focus my life on not just making a living, I wanna make a difference. It was not an easy journey. It was certainly not a smooth ride at all. It was a lot of ups and downs. You know, success is not owned, it's rented, and the rent is due every day.
Well, welcome back to Income is the Outcome, where today we are talking about paychecks and playchecks, how to secure your retirement income. If you're just tuning in and joining us, we just spent a huge chunk of time talking about building your paycheck bucket. Now it's time to talk about building the playcheck bucket, that money that you want to be able to utilize to have fun in your retirement. So, Tim, I know this is something you love being able to help folks do, is make their retirement dreams come true. For our viewers who are nearing retirement and want to generate these playchecks, how should they go about doing that? What's the best way?
You know, I think the first thing we need to do is look at the portfolio, because once we establish the baseline of the plan, the paychecks, right, the income that we need to pay for the expenses, we want to make sure now that we have the portfolio ready for retirement, right? So in other words, we need to look at the importance of not just having a diversified portfolio, it has to be in balance. That way we can maybe alter those investments and where they're at so they can fulfill their responsibility to provide some funds for those paychecks.
Right, and that's the key, is there's strategy that goes into this. We also have to pay attention to the tax considerations. So what do our viewers need to understand from a tax perspective when they're trying to generate these paychecks from their investments?
You know, we've talked before countless number of times about the 3 different classifications that the IRS uses for those dollars that you're going to withdraw for retirement income planning. The tax deferred bucket, those are your traditional IRAs, your pre-tax 401ks, your 457s. The dollars that have never been taxed that the IRS is just waiting for you to take a withdrawal so they can take some of that from you. Number 2, you have the tax deferred bucket, the monies that have been funded with after-tax dollars, but maybe they're jointly owned between husband and wife. And then our favorite bucket is the Roth IRA bucket, or the tax-free bucket. So in other words, when we're going to create a taxable, or I should say an efficient, tax-efficient withdrawal strategy, we want to make sure that we understand the difference between taxable, tax deferred, and tax free. What priority do they fall? And as we withdraw from them, we want to make sure that we're doing it in the most tax efficient manner for that retirement income for the paychecks.
Yes, and this is why you engage in strategic tax planning for your clients. Talk a little bit about this resource that we're going to be able to provide to our viewers today and how they can utilize it to help determine that for themselves as well. This
gift right here you're going to see on the screen, where you can go on to you can go to our website and you have the ability to go to that website and plug in some numbers, you know, kind of what's the overall number for our tax deferred bucket. Then it can pull up, you can actually tweak the numbers a little bit, anticipated growth rate of return, anticipated tax liability percentage. You can kind of look at that and it'll provide to you 2 different types of roadmaps or directions you can pick from. The IRS's direction, or you can pick one more of the tax efficient direction. So we encourage you to use that calculator because it's very eye-opening. Plus we can have the conversation of how do we create the most tax efficient withdrawal strategy from the assets that you have that are tax deferred.
You can scan that QR code. It'll take you right to this tax calculator that Tim is talking about. And for no strings attached, you put in some basic information. Not only are you instantly going to see side by side the difference between the government's tax plan for you if you do nothing versus how much less you could pay in tax, but you'll also receive a 4-page report emailed to you with the breakdown of your numbers. And I know, Tim, once folks see those numbers and they have that report, they're like, Tim, help, please, right?
Yes.
How do I do this? So we're excited for more folks perks to get to be able to use this. I know we only have a couple minutes left on today's show, but there is a very powerful image, a graphic that you often share with folks when they come in to build their retirement income plans with you. And I know we wanted to share this with our viewers today as well. So can you walk us through what we're looking at here?
So you're basically looking at the two different phases that we go through our financial life. So in other words, think in terms of climbing a mountain, right? Mm-hmm. We're ascending to the top of the mountain because that's a major, major challenge that we just knocked off. So in our world, that's retirement. So when you're building your wealth and you're walking up that mountain, you're going through that first phase of life on the left-hand side of the screen that says accumulation, right? Then you get to the mountaintop, that's retirement. Now we have to descend the mountain, we have to come back down. This is what we transition to what we call the distribution phase of life. And underneath both of those phrases, you'll see the challenges that we may face. So for example, when you're building your wealth, your biggest challenge is simply just saving as much as you can. Why is that? Because what are you doing during your wealth building years? You're paying off a mortgage, you're raising a family, you're paying for college. I mean, you've got so many different variables that are trying to take your dollars away. Your biggest challenge is saving enough. But we get to the glorious milestone of retirement. Now we come down the mountain. Now we have to start taking distributions from our assets. Here we are going to face challenges we didn't know even existed during our working years. We're going to face market volatility. Well, we face market volatility while we're building wealth, but the difference is we now take income from those assets, and if they face volatility, we may run out of money.
Right.
Now we're taking distributions from the tax-deferred accounts. Now we have such a thing called inflation. We talked in a previous show about what can happen. Husband and wife go into retirement together. One passes away. Now we have a survivorship risk. What does retirement look like for the surviving spouse? Right. So that's why we kind of create that very simple analogy of simply using a mountain climbing occurrence and understanding that it's also not all about return on investment in retirement. It's all about reliability of income, hence paychecks, making sure you've got income to establish the baseline for your retirement. And then for the funds that are left over, now let's fund the go-go years. Now let's create the paycheck fund so you can enjoy the retirement that you dreamed of for all these years.
And it's so important to know that you can spend that money during your go-go years and not run the risk of outliving your money later in life. This is why having that plan is so crucial.
That's right, and that's also why we wrote the book. So give us a phone call, and we'd love to sit down with you, provide you with your own written retirement income plan.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. And to our viewers at home, thank you so much for joining us. Again, that number to call to schedule your time to come in and meet with Tim is 888-992-7829. Not only are you going to be able to start that process of receiving your very own complimentary written financial plan, but you'll also receive your complimentary copy of License to Spend as well. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Income is the Outcome.